Travis Wayne Goodsell. Section 107, verses 91 and 92. And again, the duty of the president of the office of the high priesthood is to preside over the whole church, and to be like unto Moses. Moses is the Jewish Christ. He is a symbolic prophetic character from Deuteronomy 18, verses 15 through 19, and thus in the Jewish Ten Commandments. Thou shalt have no other God but the Jewish Christ, a man like Moses. Behold, here is wisdom, yea, to be a seer, a revelator, a translator, only word not footnoted by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and a prophet, having all the gifts of God, which he bestows upon the head of the church. There's your test, Mormons. Any person claiming to be the head of the church who does not have the keys of Moses as the head of the church, you know, like some other keys, like Peter, James, and John, for example, who does not have the gifts of seer, prophet, revelator, and translator, is a fraud. He's a false prophet. He's deceiving you. He's your enemy. He needs to hand it over to the one who does have the keys and the gifts. You of the Strengthening Church Members Committee, time to do your job and do a rush emergency today. Are you gonna do it? This church does not belong to Russell Marion Nelson and his 15. They need to hand it over immediately. Because yet again, I did it. Oops, I did it again. I'm still thinking about King of Kings rather than Judas Priest's Nostradamus album. We'll see. We'll see. Yes, Mormons. I am him. I have demonstrated I have the keys of Moses. I have demonstrated numerous times how I have the gifts of seership, prophecy, revelator, and translator, because I deciphered Paleo-Hebrew and the learning of the Egyptians in the language of the Egyptians. I am the foremost scholar. In the ancient Middle East. I'm forgetting the word. Humiliations galore. Because I'm thinking of and it's not. It's not archaeologist. Anthropologist. Oh my hell. And so there's only been one person, one Mormon, who's been with me from before I demonstrated the gifts, sort of, showing Hebrew translations, Egyptian stuff, from back in 2014, and he joined me around 2015. And so I've provided him with a Urim and Thummim to play with. He provided me with an earthquake detector to play with. We shared pictures, music. other fun stuff over the years. He was not compelled to believe. Signs followed his belief. He got to witness my keys in 2020. He got to witness my gifts ever since the 4th of November 2016. By him finding me, believing, and following, he was rewarded. There were 40,000 Mormons before YouTube shut me down who were around in 2018. Where are you now? You saw in that one video all of the gifts and the keys. Where are you now? You know, and you denied it. Where are you now? This is not complicated. This is how Joseph Smith allowed you Mormons to not be deceived, to not be conned by a fraudster. And you all failed. And so, several years back, Stanford joined. And he believes, and he's been following, and he's been studying on his own. From my videos, he is inspired to study his scriptures, and he shares with me what he studies. And so yesterday, he shared with me what he recently studied concerning the language of a marvelous work and a wonder in the Book of Mormon and in Isaiah. You've already seen the thumbnail picture. Everybody missed it. See, Stanford, he's a believer, but he doesn't know biblical Hebrew. He doesn't know Paleo Hebrew, even though he has access to my academia page that shows my whole decipherment work. There's still some other stuff that I could add to it and do with it, you know, upgrade the Hebrew manual and do some lexicons and translations, examples, stuff like that, as well as other languages need to be done in the similar manner that I did Paleo Hebrew with. But that's a Zion project. And so he was asking if I would teach him more about the language of marvelous work and wonder. And so he starts with quoting from Exodus chapter 7, went to 1 Nephi 14, 1 Nephi 22, 2 Nephi 25, 2 Nephi 27, 2 Nephi 29, 3 Nephi 28, 4 Nephi 1, and then ended with Isaiah 29. And that's where I started. As you see in the thumbnail picture. So blatantly obvious, and everybody missed it. So this is why they missed it. Jacob, chapter 4, verse 14. So starting in verse 13. Behold, my brethren, he that prophesieth, who predicts the future, let him prophesy to the understanding of men. For the Spirit speaketh the truth, and lieth not, because Lucifer is the father of all lies, exclusive Mormon doctrine. Anybody watch that video? It was just last week. Wherefore, it speaketh of things as they really are, of things as they really were, as things as they really will be. Sarah. Wherefore, these things are manifested unto us plainly, for the salvation of our souls. But behold, we are not witnesses alone in these things, for God also spake them unto all his prophets of old. But behold, the Jews, the Book of Mormon was written in the spirit of prophecy and revelation. 1830, April 6th, it begins. And it's prophecy, not literal history. The Book of Mormon from 1830 is now prophesying of the future. It says so numerous times. It's not the Jews. It is those who join Joseph Smith's church. You, Mormons. Mormons are a stiff-necked people. Mormons despise the words of plainness. Mormons killed Joseph Smith and Hiram and sought for things they could not understand. Jesus. Wherefore, because of their blindness, which blindness came by looking beyond the mark. And the mark is the sign. They must needs fall, for God hath taken away his plainness from them, and delivered unto them many things which they cannot understand, because Mormons desired it. And because Mormons desired it, God hath done it, that they may stumble and fall. And now I, Jacob, the usurper, am led on by the Spirit unto prophesying. For I perceive by the workings of the Spirit which is in me, that by the stumbling of Mormons they will reject Joseph Smith, the cornerstone, not the chief cornerstone of the cornerstone, you dumbass Nelson, upon which they might build and have safe foundation. By turning Joseph Smith in the Book of Mormon Christian, you reject them. You say they're wrong. They're Jewish. And by calling them Christian, you've rejected them. Very plain, you look beyond the mark. But according to the scriptures, Joseph Smith and his religion shall become the great and the last and the only sure foundation upon which Mormons can build. And now, my beloved, how is it possible that these, after having rejected Joseph Smith, the sure foundation, can ever build upon it, that it may become the capstone head of the corner? Pyramid. So, let's go over some history. Because you've already seen the thumbnail picture. There it is. So now I have to explain it. The Jewish Christ. Gone over this numerous times, shown you the pictures with it. This is the learning of the Jews from the tradition of the Jews about their Christ. There is a forerunner. Jewish tradition speaks of two redeemers, each one called Messiahs. Both are involved in the ushering in of the Messianic era, latter days. Messiah ben Joseph, Messiah descendant of Joseph of Egypt, and Messiah descendant of King David Moses the third of the 18th dynasty of Egypt, of the priesthood of Ammon, the sun god at noonday, Emmanuel, who was involved in Armageddon 1 with the Hittites, and in the midst of the war put his foot on the Mount of Olives to go on vacation with the people of Salem. In 1450 BCE, the Jews have always had claim on that whole land of Canaan because it belonged to the Egyptians under King David Moses the third. No Christian, no Islamist. It is full Jewish. When Messiah is used independently, it means Messiah ben David. Messiah ben Joseph comes first. He is of the tribe of Ephraim that usurped the birthright blessing from Manasseh, as Joseph usurped the birthright blessing from Reuben, Levi, Judah, Simeon. As Jacob usurped it from Esau, as Isaac usurped it from Ishmael, as Abraham usurped it, as Shem usurped it, as Noah usurped it, as Abel got usurped. That's a fun one. The Jewish author of Genesis didn't want to name Cain Seth. So after the death of Abel, then they brought Seth into the picture. Seth is the one who assassinated Osiris in the Egyptian documents. That's what Genesis is talking about. Because Adam and Eve are Nut and Geb of the Heliopolis creation story in Genesis chapter 1 and 2. Both are to prepare the world for the coming of the final Redeemer. Both, well, the Messiah ben Joseph prepares for the Messiah ben David. He is the precursor, the forerunner. Both are involved in gathering. But in the beginning, it's the world who does not know and are not a part of the religion. They need to join the church through missionary work. But in the latter days, with Messiah ben David, it's the Exodus gathering to Zion. And of course, the building of temples. And thus, the Kirtland Temple with Joseph Smith's vision on the third day of Passover, getting the keys from Moses. And so, it is even prophesied that Messiah ben Joseph will be murdered by the enemy, that his religion stolen, that the temple rituals altered and corrupted, and the practicing of prostituting of women begin. This is the great and abominable church. This is what the Jews called, when the Greeks did it, the abomination of desolation. And so the Messiah ben David is to restore the original church of Messiah ben Joseph. Restore the temple. Save the people from the great and abominable church. And so they talk about restoring the sacrifices. And Stanford last year inquired about the sons of Levi offering a sacrifice in righteousness in the latter days with the restoration of the temple. Stanford also had inquired about Nephi and Laban getting the brass plates. And I've been sharing the videos with you. The treasury is in the temple, in the women's gate. When you go through the doors of the temple, it's right there on your right. And you put in your money, the tithing, for the poor. Tithing is not for priestcraft, Mormons. It is not to pay the Judas price to betray Mormons and destroy them in this valley. The John Taylor video. Found another document that has other prophets of Brigham warning that they're going to be destroying Mormons in the latter days. Not just the warning of Joseph Smith in the Book of Mormon that Mormons need to get out of the great and abominable church and get to Zion, or they will die. But it talks about sabbatical years and jubilee years. Sabbatical years are 7 years. And so the dream of Pharaoh of 7 years of famine, 7 years of plenty, and Joseph of Egypt saying, hey, build storehouses so that you can be prepared before 2020. Latter days, 2 sets of 7. Both Passover and Tabernacles are 7 days. 8 days if you include the night before at 6 p.m. when the Jews start their next day. 77, 88. Anybody been paying attention to the dreams I've been having? My Hinckley, my Monson, my Eyring. Gotta pay attention. And so yes, the latter days is 7 years, 2017 to 2024. All the Jews knew it. They put the mark sign in the heavens for you to know. The Jubilee years, that's the number 50. The Exodus year is when the man like Moses turns 50. 2020. And so if you don't believe, you are an antichrist. If you say you believe in Jesus or some other Christ, like the Dalai Lama, you are an antichrist. The Jewish Ten Commandments makes that very clear. So, First Creed of Christianity, 325 CE. This is the 1700th anniversary going on right now. And Pope Leo XIV is zip. He's not talking about it. I'm talking about it. Joseph Smith talked about it. It's all wrong, abominable, and corrupt. It was the creation of Christianity. It was the creation of Jesus as Hamuzion. Not real. And so the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints goes into that and says the first creed is correct, except for the nature and character of Jesus. But Joseph already said it's all wrong, abominable, and corrupt. You can't say any of it is true. All is an absolute. And so, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is the great and abominable church yet again. Are you running the tests? Constantine is the false Christ who led people astray. He threatened everybody. All the congregational leaders were forced to go and give up their religion, give up their scripture, give up their Christ, give up the name. The scriptures of the Jews, of prophecies of the latter days of their Christ, are destroyed with the first creed of Christianity, covering it all up and hiding it as literal history, so that the Christians would put what is approved according to the first creed into what they call the Bible, with the Old and New Testaments in chronological order. There's the Latin Vulgate, and then the Septuagint, which they claimed was by the Jews. Nope, Septuagint did not exist until the Christians created it, around 400 CE, 75 years later. And the story of the Septuagint makes it obvious that it isn't true. Because the story goes that 72 Jews independently were inspired to render a translation of the whole Old Testament. Not all scriptures, just those of the Septuagint. And after they completed it, they found out from the others, oh, you did it too? Oh, let's compare. And it's exactly the same. And thus called the 70. 72, 70. Talk about your illiteracy. Talk about your failure in math. Septuagint 2. So yeah, it's a fraud. The Christians purposely botched the translation of the original documents that the Dead Sea Scrolls revealed unto us. The Qumran community were the source origin. Did not exist before. But because of the abomination of the first creed of Christianity, that gave rise to the creation of the Bible. And that gave rise to the abomination of the documentary hypothesis. But first, I almost forgot the biblical Hebrew text. A group of Jews called Masoretes, and there were several, at least two groups. They had different styles. They got together with their groups. They had certain scriptures that they selected to work on, and began to, God, what do I call the abomination? They took from the original source document from the Dead Sea Scrolls, they had a version of that, because their biblical Hebrew version matches most closely with the Dead Sea Scrolls versions. And Emmanuel Tove has done a comparison with his book, had several editions of. I highly recommend it. It was my textbook when I went to school on the subject matter. He goes through how they have their differences. But for the most part, it is the closest match. And the Masoretes changed the script from Paleo-Hebrew script to Aramaic script. So if you go to your printed versions, because I won't show them in the other versions, because my Psalm 119 in this CD-ROM version that I use has English A, Aleph. It won't do the Hebrew. The beta version that I had, but my dad erased and threw away, I believe did have the Hebrew, because they had a Hebrew and a Greek study aid for me as well. Yes, I have been betrayed. Guess what the name of my mom is? According to prophecy. Then they added vowel letters and vowel points. The Paleo-Hebrew script only has 22 letters, same with Aramaic. There was the erroneous belief that Aramaic was just a de-evolution of Paleo-Hebrew. And as far back as they can figure, Babylonian Semitic Hebrew is Paleo-Hebrew. God, everybody's a dumbass. They all claim to be PhDs, experts in the field, and they're all dumbasses. All looking beyond the mark by trusting in the first creed of Christianity. That's where they all go wrong. All of this is a consequence of the first creed. And so they fixed the translation to just one and only one translation. And because they are the Jews, their biblical Hebrew text is the authoritative source for the Jews. Jewish Publication Society is the modern authoritative source for it. and it's all wrong, abominable, and corrupt. Because now what has happened, as you can see from the thumbnail picture, is that they took definitions from other cultures and languages, just as with the Septuagint, the Latin Vulgate did, but made it Latin or Greek. And so now they were doing it with Biblical Hebrew. This causes a multi-personality disorder of the authors. It's just awful. Just awful. Because the word for sign, for example, that I show you in blue highlighting, it's in the same book scroll of Isaiah. And yet, it's translated differently depending on the vowel addings. Because they didn't want to use the pattern of the author all the way through his book. Every one of us has a linguistic pattern. Same with the Jews who wrote the scriptures. You can't alter that pattern. You have to stick to that pattern all the way through their book. And yes, this is where Joseph Smith comes in with the King Follett sermon, where he says, talking to Rabbi Sykes, who taught him Biblical Hebrew in 1836, that Elohim must be translated plural throughout the book, throughout the Bible. It was the first creed of Christianity that turned gods into God. Homoousion, Trinity. Thus Allah for Islam, we. All wrong, abominable, and corrupt. You can't do that. And so yes, it does destroy the biblical Hebrew text. But the biblical Hebrew text already destroyed the original document. So Joseph Smith was talking about correcting the translation of the biblical Hebrew text according to the original documents. And wouldn't you know it, when the Dead Sea Scrolls were finally discovered, they found Genesis chapter 1. And what do you know? Joseph Smith was right. And so we'll get to it. Got documentary hypothesis up. I can't have two Adobe readers like I can have different word text. So, the documentary hypothesis. In the mid-18th century, 1700s, some scholars, dumbasses, started a critical study of doublets, parallel accounts of the same incidences. No, they're not. Translate it correctly. Oh, there it is. It's from the Egyptian documents. Inconsistencies and changes in style, linguistic style, and vocabulary in the Torah. This is how they're explaining the first creed of Christianity. God. But I've already told you this. Multi-personality disorder. That's what they found out. In 1780, Johann Eichhorn was building on the work of the French doctor and exegete Jean Astruc. Whatever, it's French, just silent. Conjectures and others formulated the older documentary hypothesis. The idea that Genesis was composed of combining two identifiable sources, the Yahwist and the Elohist. So this is how they were doing it. And it's all crap. They did not use the scientific process. This is not a hypothesis, this is crap. They biased it with the first creed of Christianity. When you're doing research, you gather the evidence, you look for patterns, you find anomalies. You need to explain those anomalies. You need to use logical Socratic methodology in your theory premises. All of the premises must be logical. No fallacies whatsoever. If you put the fallacy of the first creed, you've tainted your conclusion. And you have to go back and remove the fallacies and put in something logical. This would help Mormon apologists, but as Mormon apologists, they are not going to do it. By definition of apologist. And so the conclusion needs to be tested. You can't just say stuff. You need to test it. You need to demonstrate to other people your work so that they can check you. Because if you just say that space aliens built the pyramids, there is no test to run until space aliens appear, which nullifies the whole conclusion. You have to get rid of it. You got to find another set of premises that are all logical to lead to the conclusion. As much as Battlestar Galactica was fun and it was by a Mormon. Some believe. It doesn't matter who believes. Your beliefs have to be based on truth, and the scriptures tell you to run the test. Run the test, Mormons. That's all you had to do. All you had to do, and you wouldn't have been deceived. You get 3 confirmations from separate testing on the same thing, and you've now established a fact. If you can repeat that test over and 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 over, you've established eternal law, like the laws of physics. You want to prove the law of gravity? We can all do it together. Separate tests, all confirmed. E equals mass times acceleration. Force equals mass times acceleration. E equals mc squared. That's debatable. Scully's thesis just proves it. Nonetheless. Okay? And so then they would develop from Yahwist and Elohist sources a Deuteronomist and a priestly source, and then a redactor. as well. But they're not running the test. There is no document. You need that document to run the test. There is no document prior to the Qumran community, except for the Egyptian documents. But according to theirs, the Egyptian documents are not the source documents for the Qumran community. So they don't say it. It's the wrong argument. They used fallacies, and thus their conclusion is wrong. But if you stick to logic, there they are in the Egyptian documents. Dorothy Murdoch knew it. Gary Greenberg knew it. I knew it. This was what became the Zeitgeist movement. Only Dorothy got interviewed for the Zeitgeist movie. But that's what I mean by Zeitgeist movement. People were finding out that the Bible stories were coming from ancient other source documents. And so, yes, that's why I've been telling you, everybody goes back to the Egyptians. Egyptians were first. Then they migrated out into the different cultures around the world. And that's why you see the pattern match. Real simple when you use science and the scientific methodology for research development and theory testing. And all of these guys in the field failed because of the first creed of Christianity. And so because of this abomination, it then led to Deutero-Isaiah and Trito-Isaiah. Now people were saying that the one and only one scroll of Isaiah from the Qumran community is now from three source documents. Proto-Isaiah, they say, comes from the 8th century BCE, when Isaiah was alive. Created by the Qumran community. Isaiah is not Isaiah. Notice how Isaiah is Jesus. Go to Matthew. He explains it for you. He's talking about the prophecies of Isaiah about Emmanuel. And so his character is named Jesus. Notice how he doesn't say it's Isaiah that he's quoting from. He uses Jesus to let the Jews know he's referring to Isaiah. Real simple. And so the Deutero-Isaiah is in the 6th century. God, what an abomination. This is after the Babylonian captivity. In the 500s. Am I getting this right? Because I think we have to go... No, it's still because, yeah, God. The 0 year that doesn't exist screws everything up. And so 56 to 66 are in Isaiah, well, yeah. 1 to 39 is Proto-Isaiah, 40 to 55 is Deutero-Isaiah, 56 to 66 is Trito-Isaiah. And they say the 5th or 6th centuries. They don't know. But when the document shows up, they'll prove that it's true. Just crap. All crap. Oh, dear God. But again, part of the problem also is that the book of Matthew, as well as the other Gospels, are what they're claiming comes from original source documents. Because they do it with the New Testament too. And so that's why they say that Mark is probably the oldest, etc. But yes, they were separate documents, and I've shown that Revelation, for example, comes from two separate documents that the Christians combined together into one. You have the first part that talks about letters to the 7 churches in Turkey, and then you get into the dates for which Revelation is named. Dates, the book of dates. That's what it's called. And so the same thing with each of the Gospels. There's the tales of the God, which are prophecy and revelation of the Jewish Christ, but then you have apocalypses, like Revelation, giving you dates. And so Matthew 24 and 25 is the apocalypse of Matthew. That's a separate book. Christians combined it together when they created their Bible. And that is where they're erroneously creating this documentary hypothesis, and thus with the New Testament books as well, and Isaiah and others. But you get rid of the first creed and look at them again, make a correct translation, and bibbity bobbity boo, abracadabra. No magic. Science. Everything's fixed. And so this has caused consternation, constipation in Mormons. And so this is an underground discussion, not for the regular Mormons who are stupid. Only the smart Mormons have this secret combination being talked about in underground circles. It's all crap, guys. Because it destroys the Book of Mormon. Nonetheless, Isaiah, Proto-Isaiah, 2 Nephi 12 to 24, 2 Nephi 27. That's where Isaiah 29 comes from. Proto-Isaiah. And yet, it's Latter-day Prophecy Isaiah, which is considered Deutero-Isaiah, which is 1 Nephi 20 to 21, 2 Nephi 7 to 8, Mosiah 14, 3 Nephi 22. And then there's nothing by Trito-Isaiah. And so because Deutero-Isaiah is in the 6th century, that's how they fudge it. They put it back before in the 7th century. You can't do that, guys. It says 6. Can't do that. Nope. And so, yes, this is where you have those of the underground knowing about anachronism. It's when you have a document and you place it in a time period it does not belong. Exactly what the first creed did, by turning it into literal history and making a chronological order. The whole Bible is an anachronism now. It's false. So likewise with the Book of Mormon. There have been Mormons who have left the church because they found anachronisms. And so cows, oops, anachronism. Coins, anachronism. Geography, anachronism. Names, anachronism. Etc., etc., etc. I have added a number of anachronisms for you guys, and you don't listen. Abinadi and the Ten Commandments. The Sabbath. No! This was written by the Qumran community after the Babylonian captivity. The Babylonians created the Sabbath day, the seventh day of the week. They created a calendar with 7 days in a week. And on the seventh day, they were superstitious that people were going to die and be cursed by their gods. And so the ruler said, nobody works on the Sabbath day. Saturday, the seventh day of the week. And that's where it comes from. So prior to, it did not exist. It only exists when it was created. Just like Christianity. Christianity did not exist until Constantine created it 1700 years ago this year, that Pope Leo is not talking about. Very simple. Don't go beyond the mark. Don't make it complicated because you want it complicated. But you see why they are doing it is because they want to prove the first creed is true. And it's not. And so everything is going astray. Everything is branching off into absurdity. And so the Book of Mormon can't be true. If the first creed is true, and the church says, yes, it's just the nature and character that's wrong. So the church confesses, yeah, the Book of Mormon's a fraud when they embrace the first creed. And so, yes, they claim Jesus Christ was literal history during the Roman period time, but as a half god, half mortal. Hercules, Perseus, pagans, called by Christians. Still not real. And so, in so doing, they claim that the scriptures have these problems of the documentary hypothesis, even though they're too stupid to understand it. False prophets, they always expose themselves. Alrighty? And so thus, you can see that Joseph Smith is correct. We believe the Bible to be the Word of God as far as it is translated correctly. Not complicated. Not complicated. Okay, let's bring up the King Follett. Do a brief thing on that. Even though we're at an hour. Question is, where did I put it? Where did I I don't need to go over an algorithm. What did they call it again? Amalgamated. There's multiple scribes that did this on the weekend of, or the 6th, 7th, 8th, the funeral for King Follett. And so, because Brigham Young didn't like what was said in it, he didn't publish it. And so obviously Joseph Smith didn't have time to edit it, to have it set for publishment. Nonetheless, we don't want we want the it's in here somewhere. There's the signs of the times. Deuteronomy, Isaiah, Church History, Book of Isaiah. It has to be this, I guess. But it's awful long. I had a shorter one. Is it? Okay. From the David O. McKay Library, Ricks College Archives. The typed out version. And so it did get published August 1st, 1844 in the Times and Seasons. This is that version. Notice it's after Joseph Smith is dead. So Willard Richards, Wilford Woodruff, Thomas Bullock, William Clayton all had their versions. But here's what I've been talking about. I have now preached a little Latin, a little Hebrew, Greek, German, and I have fulfilled all. I am not so big a fool as many have taken me to be. The Germans now know that I read the German correctly. He talks about Alexander Campbell, from which Sidney Rigdon came from. Humiliates him. I shall comment on the very first Hebrew word in the Bible. I will make a comment on the very first sentence of the history of creation in the Bible. Bereshit. They spelled it wrong. They put a 1 instead of an I. And how? 1 is over here, I is over here. How did you botch that? Nonetheless, I want to analyze the word. The Hebrew is removed. The Hebrew was put in a later edition in the church history volumes. The original 1949, I think it was, History of the Church by Joseph Smith, not B.H. Roberts, did not have the Hebrew either. And so a later edition of that, which I had had when I went to Rick's, and was able to acquire my own church history collection thanks to my parents paying for it. I wasn't going to wait until they died to get their church history library as an inheritance, which I knew I would have to split up with my siblings. And then little did I know that my parents would betray me and remove me from the will anyway. After destroying all my property and throwing it away and erasing me from history. Bastards. Every one of you betrayers. Fulfilling prophecy, my ass. Anyway. And so, yes, if you know about it, you know that it's got a oopsie in it. Because its first part, yes, they put in the correct biblical Hebrew. But then, talking about gods in the plural and referring to Lucifer, talking about gods, they repeated Genesis chapter 1. And that's why they don't have it anymore. They just removed it altogether because they're not smart enough to know otherwise. They could have just put in the correct one and fixed it that way, but they just said, yeah, let's just get rid of it. Hebrew. Nonetheless, Baith. That's the first letter at the beginning. It's not the first letter, Aleph, in biblical Semitic Hebrew phonetics. And so I guess we got to talk about this. Paleo-Hebrew, also called Phoenician, first alphabet. This was among the greatest inventions of mankind, having to do with language, having to do with communication, to be able to understand other humans and communicate. Kind of important. It's a basic necessity. And thus, anything to do with a language invention is a massive, groundbreaking discovery. And so a person who can decipher it nonetheless. And so over time, the Greeks decided to add letters. And they all come from the Egyptians, the hieroglyphs. Each of the letters have their own independent meaning because of the hieroglyph that they are from. But when you combine them together, you add meaning. It's a visionary language. You are being told a story from pictures. Picture is worth 1,000 words? Yeah. And so you can't just do one word definitions. That you destroy the meaning, the full meaning of the word. And so Paleo-Hebrew has 2-word base meanings. 2 alphabet letters combined together for a root word. You know, yes, you can have individual letters, but there's only 22. When you combine every letter into 2 letters, you now have 22 times 22 in your base vocabulary. They used what is called prefix and suffix determinatives for nouns. If it's a verb, it is identified with a prefix determinative for the verb tense. A prefixed verb tense. And there are only 3: past, present, future. It's here. And so this is how the linguistic structure pattern can be identified to be correctly translated. This is necessary to understand what Joseph Smith is explaining here. And so over time, you have the Greeks who then add or change several of their letters to be vowels, so that they can be spoken. They still use their extended alphabet listing, but now they've got vowels so that it can be spoken. So now you can speak rather than have to write to other people what you're communicating. But for trade with different languages, it was easier to have the visionary language to go, oh, even though you can't understand each other's different language. But over time, they would learn by association. You know, you live among those who speak Spanish as an English person, and you pick up Spanish. Just like Spanish pick up English as a second language. That's how it was done anciently as well. And so the Babylonians, which were Assyrians previously, likewise took that Phoenician and created their biblical or Babylonian Semitic Hebrew. It shouldn't be Babylonian, because Babylonians did it, but Assyrians also. And so it's Semitic Hebrew. That's where Semitic comes from. The Bible, by the first creed of Christianity, turning it into literal history, and therefore Noah landed on Mount Ararat in Turkey, who had 3 sons. Japheth went to Europe. Shem, the birthright blessing son, went to Assyria. What? And Ham went to Kemet, being Chem. And I don't know why the Jews missed that. Genesis author put Mitzrayim for Egypt. What the hell? You already have Ham for Egypt. Nonetheless, and so because of this original alphabet language, other cultures are now picking it up and altering it according to their culture and linguistics, etc. It's altered Hebrew, reformed, as the Book of Mormon talks about Hebrew being reformed Hebrew, Egyptian being reformed Egyptian. That's all they're talking about. Don't get complicated with it, you dumbasses. And so this is the error that people make. Semitic Hebrew is 3-letter root words. That's why if you know the tradition, you're going, no, Travis, Hebrew has 3 letters as a root. No, they don't. Semitic does. You dumbass. I know the tradition. Don't tradition-splain me. Yeah. F. Michael Watson thought he had authority. He did not have. I have a friend at BYU who said the tradition is this way, Travis. You're wrong. Joseph Smith is wrong. I'm going to excommunicate you. No, you didn't. You failed. You got humiliated, and Hinckley put you in your place. And then Monson got rid of you. Loser! Move along! They didn't even make you emeritus status. That's gotta hurt. Loser! So, and don't even get me started on the punishment that Daniel Peterson got. You don't mess with the Jesus card boy. You're gonna get burned. Okay? And so Aramaic is different from Hebrew, from Paleo-Hebrew script, as a completely different script. It is not a de-evolution. Aramaic is from different Egyptian hieroglyphs, similar to Coptic, different Egyptian hieroglyphs, though there are some similarities. John Gee does not know Coptic, even though he teaches it at BYU. Doesn't he still teach it there? Shouldn't he be punished by the church too, especially for his abomination in the Gospel Topics essays, historicity and translation of the Book of Abraham? That was Gee. What a loser. Joseph is wrong. He never said he was a translator. Multiple times, you dumbass. Sends me a letter and multiple translations of Egyptian, thinking that I'll never figure it out because I'm stupid, and thus he's funny and laughing at me. Nope, I knew all the different translations that you did, and you're a dumbass. You deny Joseph. That's the point. Tell Mormons. Tell them Joseph Smith is false. I dare you. Be honest. And then get humiliated with this video that I already gave you the answer. This is all just extra fluff stuff for you in case you hadn't caught on. I showed you who I am at the beginning so that you can understand it. I give you the rest. All right? Real simple. So Joseph Smith says the first letter does not belong there. That a Christian, which he says is a Jew, added it. Because of the tradition that Jews wrote the Septuagint. Because that's what it is in the Septuagint translation into English. In the beginning. They added in the Septuagint and in the Latin Vulgate. No, not supposed to be there. They altered the translation. The Septuagint and the Latin Vulgate are completely different documents from the original. But this is what we've always believed is the original translation. And Joseph Smith says, nope, wrong. And he's right. And so he does understand that the letter B means in, by, through, and everything else. The Jews translate it as when God began, which is also wrong. Not just because when does not belong at the beginning of the sentence, because it ruins the linguistic pattern of the author, but because no verb tense at the beginning of bara, the verb. Oh my God, I gotta fix everything for everybody. And so Rosh, that's the word. The R, A, and S, simplified for you. Because I can give you the Greek versions, or I can give you the Babylonian Semitic versions. The Paleo-Hebrew, you should apply to their Greek equivalents, so that the Yod is not the Yod, which is the iota in Greek from the Babylonian Semitic Yod, but it's actually the Zeta of the Greeks, which is Zeus. Yah is Zeus. I know this is complicated. If you don't understand, it's okay. I don't have the pictures to show you. I have to transfer them. Don't make me do the extra work. It's already long enough. I've already done the videos. Just find it. Find it. 8.8K videos. Should be easy to find. And so, Rosh, containing the S, he makes a boo-boo. He says, sheet is the grammatical termination. No, the T is, not the S in the T. The S belongs to Rosh. He's just explaining the tradition. And then, after explaining the tradition, then he says, ooh, he does not say Jew. Oh, no, he does. When the inspired man wrote it, he did not put the Beth there, the B. Sure enough, Qumran Community Jew did not put it in. Does not belong. Joseph is right. We now have the document. We now know the truth. Confirmed. An old Jew, without any authority, added the words. Try a Christian. No authority. He thought it too bad to begin to talk about the head. But the Jews called Masoretes did add in a Beth. So he is correct that it was an old Jew without any authority. Masoretes. But the head is not the name of God. I am head. All bow to me. No, that's not what Joseph means. Don't be stupid. Who is the Hebrew God? Yah. Oh, there he is, all over Genesis 1. How did everybody miss that? Oh, right, the first creed of Christianity. And so in Genesis chapter 2, verse 4, which, ooh, documentary hypothesis time. No. That's the new name, Yahweh. He completed his assignment as Yah, removed from the translation because of the first creed of Christianity abomination. And now you see that Yah does the work, finishes the work, and is now named Yahweh. That's biblical Semitic Hebrew. I don't care about the phonemes. You know, Jehovah is an even worse abomination because of the Latin languages, or Jesus for the J for Spanish. And so, Jehu. Stop it. Just stop. Don't do it. And you did it. And so, yes, the sentence structure is now corrected by Joseph Smith. The linguistic pattern is now established for the rest of the book. Because Joseph Smith is right. Follow this pattern. Noun, verb. The T does not belong at the end as a grammatical termination. For head females? Because the T at the end of a noun is the feminine plural. No. It is the masculine singular, head. Head will create, bring forth, bara. The verb tense of the future. This is a prophecy. Genesis is a prophecy, not literal history of the past. Real simple. And so in Genesis chapter 1, I think it's around 14, the creation of the stars, for signs. Yeah, that word, that's the date of the coming of the Messiah of the Jews. And that's where you see Isaiah getting botched with that word in the singular. In one passage, he says Emmanuel is coming between 2017 to 2024, the latter days. 2017 is what he is talking about in verse 14. Virgo conceives Jupiter and gives birth. 23rd September 2017. Revelation chapter 12, verses 1, 2, and 5. Joseph Smith translation moves it to verse 3. Book of Mormon has it, verses 8 through 10 in 1 Nephi chapter 1. Everybody knew the dates. Everybody knew the days and hours. A Christian said no, because Jesus is literal history in the Roman period. And so it's a second coming. And no man knows, because we're going to destroy the earth and blame Jesus for it. Right, Danites? Ready? Should have trusted Joseph. You didn't. Just utterly, humiliatingly embarrassing. That's all. Knowing the learning of the Jews and the tradition of the coming of Messiah ben Joseph and Messiah ben David, there it is in Isaiah. Therefore, behold, I will proceed to do a marvelous work among this people, even a marvelous work and a wonder, for the wisdom of their wise men shall perish, and the understanding of their prudent men shall be hid. And it's in the Book of Mormon, plagiarized, errors and all, in 2 Nephi chapter 27. What is fascinating is that Joseph Smith Sr. had to rewrite the 116 pages, putting Junior on timeout for a whole year, while the Book of Mormon gets finished by Sidney Rigdon, who had time at the end because of Junior's mishap. How dare you have your firstborn die? You ruined everything. My life is ruined because of what you did. I just, why? I guess I need to fix it. Anyway, it still works. And so, Senior, as I told you, working with William Morgan on the book in Canandaigua Lodge, it is established as fact that Senior was the master mason at that lodge, despite Mormons trying to confuse the issue and say, we don't know, we do, run the test, you dumbasses. The tests are confirmed more than 3 times. Joseph Smith is the author, Senior, is the author of the rewritten 116 pages. This right here, about the coming of his son. You look beyond the mark when you call the Book of Mormon literal history, because you're saying the first creed is true. And then you got the conundrum of, oh no, Deutero-Isaiah. You're making it worse. You're digging a deeper hole by continuing to add abominations upon abominations to confirm the first abomination. Stop it. And so, when I checked the Hebrew, oh, Joseph. Interesting. You need to understand the church that tells us that this is what it meant. They know, because Joseph told us. And so Bruce R. McConkie in Isaiah chapter 29's heading, which I'm sure would be the same in 2 Nephi 27, we'll check, which, there it is, Way down in verse 9. Seriously, guys? Nephites shall speak as a voice from the dust. He's treating the Book of Mormon as literal history, not as prophecy to Mormons about the latter days. Giving you the date of the latter days, when the Christ will be there for you, Mormons, and you will ignore him, and you will want to murder him, silence his channel, claim Jesus is true. The apostasy. Now, do you understand the apostasy? The murder of Joseph Smith. The restoration by Messiah ben David. And the coming forth of the Book of Mormon, which is a prophecy to Mormons. Isaiah is prophesying of the Book of Mormon, which is going to be prophesying about Isaiah's prophecies of the coming of the Jewish Christ, who would be a Mormon. And Messiah ben Joseph is Joseph Smith Jr. to prepare Mormons for the coming of a Mormon, who is Messiah ben David. Real simple. Real simple. The church knows it, but they can't tell you the truth. 2 Nephi 27. Let's check. Oh, I could have. So, 2 Nephi 27. Bruce R. McConkie instead puts, darkness and apostasy shall cover the earth in the last days. Yeah. After the death of Joseph Smith, there will be darkness and apostasy in the great and abominable church of Brigham Young of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. The Book of Mormon shall come forth by Joseph Smith. 3 witnesses shall testify of the book. The learned man cannot read the sealed book. So they're trying to say Sidney Rigdon when he went to New York. It's that fulfillment. And yeah, Joseph Smith did use that. Martin Harris lied. Didn't tell the full truth, but they used it anyway to show Isaiah has to do with Joseph Smith and the Book of Mormon. Because it does. Marvelous Work and a Wonder is the Book of Mormon. And it's going to prophesy to Mormons about the latter days and the coming of the Messiah. Here I am. You don't need to look for Jesus anymore. Here I am. Human. But we want somebody immortal. And thus the marvelous work and wonder. And so what the correct translation of Isaiah is telling you is that Joseph, Messiah ben Joseph, who is Joseph Smith Jr., will make the Book of Mormon. The words of the prophecy of the latter days for Mormons, the people. And it will just destroy all of the stupidity of scholars who botched the translation of scriptures because of the first creed of Christianity. Ta-da! All of their wisdom lost, gone, destroyed by he who deciphered Paleo-Hebrew. And so Joseph will make a work prophesying of the latter days. The Paleo-Hebrew script, A and X, the last letter. The Chi and the Aleph, Alpha, turned on its side, for the shadow of Emmanuel over the United States of America. 21st of August, 2017. 14th of October, 2023. 8 April, 2024. All the Jews knew it. And they gave the dates, even if it was in the text or in the story form. Samson kills the lion, 21st of August, 2017 in Leo. The King Star. Samson, Sun King. Wife gets burned. What she did to me, I was really hoping. I'll have to wait for the day that shall burn as an oven instead, I guess. But nonetheless, 14th of October, 2023. In Virgo, the church. I have to take you to that too, don't I? Revelation chapter 12 in the Joseph Smith translation, verse 7. The woman, Virgo, is the church representation. So the prophecies refers to the church. What happened on that Saturday, Mormons? It was a one and only one-time event because Nelson took over. Verse 4. Yeah, the Relief Society, with the woman who was in the primary presidency, is now the Relief Society presidency. Primary, children, Relief Society, mothers. On the 23rd of September 2017, the Relief Society annual meeting is now a part of conference. And so now the church went back into their website for conference talks and attached all Relief Society meetings to be included with conferences. And then Nelson took over and did away with it. And then, and so Jupiter is your Christ, Emmanuel. That's why I do my signs in the heavens pictures for you all this time. So now the moon is on the throne of God. As what video am I doing for you now? And then 8 April 2024. Samson takes down the Philistines at the Philistine temple, and he himself is sacrificed. Revelation chapter 19, verses 11 and 17, with the Lamb. Ta-da! And so the 2020 Exodus, Lehi's Exodus, brilliant. 600 years from the time Lehi left Jerusalem. Senior is providing you a little math clue, a map, not only for the location of the latter days, but the location of Zion, where X would mark the spot, for the coming of the Christ to Mormons, but also tells you the Exodus year, which Oaks then screwed it all up and said, we're just going to run a test that year instead. I still did my part. I just want you to know that. Even though the church just ran a test run for the coming of Jesus, they that come shall burn you, Mormons. It's the church. Joseph Smith warned you in verse 1. Because they that come will claim to be Christian and blame Jesus. Ooh, who put Jesus Christ in the name of Joseph's church? Oh, Willard Richards of Brigham Young's 12. who shot Joseph in the back and dumped his body out the window to be shot at the well. Exactly. And so this is why I do my videos all these years, Mormons. Everything is here. And so even though this is a little more complicated for you, because of the blindness that the church put on you, so you're not studying it, you don't know what to look at. Avraham Gileadi should have. He claims he's the expert on Isaiah. He didn't catch this. I did. He's not the expert. He's a fraud. He betrayed you when he caved to say that the Jewish Christ is no longer in existence because the church fired me and excommunicated me for it. He has no honor and integrity. Isaiah is talking about Joseph Smith directly by name, as well as my name, Emmanuel. And Avraham Gileadi betrayed you to lose his honor and integrity so that he can come back into the church and continue to get paid at BYU, claiming he's now the authority on Isaiah. He's a loser. He has led you astray by miseducating you. He has no authority. Neither does any of the leaders of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. They need to hand it over to me immediately so that I can begin to save you. And for the most part, I'm willing to bet Mormons are running away. That the YouTube Mormon employee down in Utah County has rigged the algorithms so that you won't find this video. But you who are of the Strengthening Church Members Committee who are forced to watch this video and return and report, you have the responsibility to return and report. You cannot cover this up and not give an incomplete return and report. You have to tell them everything. You better do it.